I'm on a journey to beat Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate before the launch of Monster Hunter Wilds next year. In today's episode, we're going to be taking on all of the Fated 4 along with another fan favourite monster. And of course I'll be giving my thoughts as we go along. But before we can do this, there's a few quests we need to power through. I did the boring, more tedious ones off camera, but there's a few of interest I'd like to showcase. Firstly, Yangaruga and Rathalos. I'm lumping them both into the same portion of this video as they're both flying monsters that spit fire at you. Despite being similar on paper, they do play very different. Yan is erratic, hard to read, and overall more annoying to deal with. But despite this, he isn't particularly difficult. Rathalos, on the other hand, for me anyway, is much more telegraphed, controlled, and he wields his weapon in a more precise manner. Maybe it's purely because I've fought more Rathalos than Yangarugas, that's how I feel. Despite this, when his attacks do land, they hit much harder. What both of them do share is the classic lawnmower move. No matter how skilled I think I am in these games, and no matter how much more I improve going forward, I will forever get ran over on repeat by this. And during my Rathalos hunt, guess what happened? We finally managed to get our first tail cut. Honestly, I didn't even remember this was a thing that could happen. I believe the reason why it took me so long to finally get my first cut was because my biggest weakness in Generations Ultimate is positioning. In the modern games you can generally reposition while fighting, but in this game you have to be much more proactive and set yourself up before drawing your weapon. I'm definitely improving episode by episode, but let me know in the comments, does my gameplay look better to you compared to previous episodes? While we're on the subject, I do recommend you to go and watch the previous videos of this series. I put them all into one playlist, so it's more convenient for you to do so if you'd like to. By the way, Rathalos armour in this game is pretty damn good. As I mentioned in the last episode, I don't want to grind too hard since we'll be replacing gear in high rank anyway. But I was also close to completing a few pieces, so I thought why not. As we continue tackling these key quests required to unlock the Fated 4, the game teases us with glimpses of what's to come. Wanting to experience them in their full glory later on, I try to ignore them as much as possible and just get my current task done. I just need to hear its roar. Okay, now we can ignore it for the time being. However, some of them wanted to get a bit more involved than I did. Don't mind me, just taking an egg. Bye bye. Okay, how do I do this without everything going wrong? Go this way? Easy does it. This is going way too well. What? Oh, I don't want to. I ran out of stamina. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do this quest. Uh-oh. Where's he gone?
Enemy spotted.
Oh, it would just be that. No. No, no, no. No, please. Yeah, there's one. Just no need, really. You don't see me. Oh, they've spotted me. No, 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 no. That wasn't so bad. Now, before we get to the Fated 4, we need to take down Uragon. I never thought I would say this, but I actually struggled with him. His ground tremors are no joke, and bouncing off him is all too easy. Plus, his death roll is downright terrifying in GU. Despite being large in stature, he stays surprisingly low to the ground, and his sweeping attacks can catch you off guard if you're not prepared. I tried using Valor Sheath to handle most of his moves, but that only works if you see them coming. More often than not, I would think he's simply turning around, but it would turn out to be an attack, resulting in me getting hit. That's enough about Uragon for now. Let's dive into the main reason you'll probably hear. The Fated 4 are legendary creatures within GU, each one deeply tied to their respective villages, posing a threat that no ordinary hunter can tackle. When you finally embark on these quests, you're greeted with uniquely animated cutscenes, something the standard monsters don't offer, signifying that this is indeed a major milestone. It's like the game is saying everything up to this point was just training. Here is the real test. I'll break down each monster, discussing their design, movesets, and my overall impressions of them within Generations Ultimate. First up is Mizutsune. Mystical is the word I'd use to describe this bubbly creature. There's an elegance about her that reminds me of a traditional Japanese kimono. At first glance it doesn't seem intimidating, if anything it looks quite playful with all its slipping and sliding around. However, unprepared hunters quickly learn otherwise. I've fought many Mizutsunes in Monster Hunter Rise, around 15 in the demo alone, so I'm pretty familiar with this fight, but adapting to monsters you already know in GU presents a challenge in itself. Mizutsune uses the soap-like substance it secretes to glide around the battlefield, allowing for swift repositioning. This fluid movement adds complexity to its attacks. For instance, its water beam is already dangerous, but when you combine this with Mizutsune's newfound mobility, it becomes even more terrifying. And without wire bugs, you need to respect these attacks more than ever. However, you can turn its movement against it. Hitting Mizutsune in the head will often send it tumbling over, giving you a wide opening to deal damage. Many of her moves are well telegraphed, making it quite easy to dodge if you're playing in the Valor style. In general, Mizu might be one of my favourite fights in the whole series. There's a level of organised chaos that accompanies her. For example, getting hit by her bubbles will often result in you sliding around the same way that she does. While this makes the hunter harder to control, it doesn't completely take you out of the fight. In some instances, it will even help you close distances quicker, but you need to take into account your sliding momentum if you want to position effectively. And that's what I love about the fight. This blight adds a unique modifier to the hunt that isn't just damage infliction like poison or fire blight. Overall, it's a fantastic hunt. I get a mount to end it. Okay, well. Yeah, that'll do the trick. Next, let's talk about Astalos. I've never had a strong opinion on him, given my limited experience in Sunbreak. Astalos' cutscene is a stark contrast to what we saw with Mizutsune. It's all aggression, lightning crackles across his body, setting the tone for what's to come. Unlike most flying monsters that dive in with their talon or tails, Astalos crashes down to the ground, slamming its wings as a primary method of attack. And while you'll catch monsters such as Kezu spitting balls of electricity, Astalos instead summons static surges that zigzag across the battlefield, making them highly unpredictable and more difficult to dodge. And all of this is without mention of his tail, which serves as a weapon itself. Whether it be a beam of lightning or an electro field, Astalos has an answer for many situations. Much like Kidding, the horn on its head seems to be his primary method of controlling the element, so you'll want to chip away at that whenever possible. But that's where Astalos is so interesting. Because he is so forward facing and aggressive, this weak point is always presented towards you, but difficult to stay on target. Likewise, most of the openings on his tail are also moments with the tail's attack. The reason I bring this up is that usually monsters we saw earlier, like Rathalos, will almost swap between their head and tail being the opening. While grounded, you can beat on Rathalos' head all day, you just need to be wary of his fireballs. Likewise, while he's airborne, the tail hangs down, inviting you to attack there instead. Astalos doesn't follow this rule set. Very fitting of his behaviourisms, he's a double-edged sword. He'll attack with these vulnerable points at the forefront, with offense acting as his best defense. You can just chip away at his legs, but you won't make nearly as much progress compared to if you're able to slip past his attacks and hit the horn. Overall, it's just a great fight concept. Now, here's a monster many of you have been waiting for, Gammoth. He's a fan favourite to say the least, with recent discussions about his potential return in Monster Hunter Wilds circulating around the community. Gammoth's sheer size is what sets him apart from others. He's nearly double the size of the Uragon we encountered earlier on today. The towering behemoth is mighty in appearance. Just one look at him makes you understand why he is a member of the Fated Four. The fight itself is intriguing. You ideally want to target his trunk, but doing so puts you in a very risky position. Gammoth has a tricky AoE attack where he'll create blizzards and avalanches that trap you in ice. This renders you unable to do anything other than run for your life. Furthermore, Gammoth often rears up and sends the full weight of himself crashing down towards the icy landscape. Naturally, this puts you as a player in a position whereby you'll want to just chip away at his legs instead. While the damage is less effective, you can hit him there much more consistently and, more importantly, safely. Outside of that, this fight is incredibly straightforward and there's not a whole lot to it. It's more of a war of attrition than anything else. I often found myself getting impatient and taking a few extra swings at him that would ultimately come back to bite me. And well, to be honest, that really is all there is to Gammoth. Simple but strong, which is the perfect match for his design concept. He stands as a stalwart warrior, not wavering until the very end, and it will take you just that extra bit longer to get to the end of the hunt with his matchingly high health pool. I would love for him to be reintroduced into Monster Hunter Wilds, but maybe with a touch of extra flavour. Before we can unlock the next urgent quest, we need to tackle Lagiacrus. While this video is primarily focusing on the Fated Four, Laggy is a fan favourite as well, so I thought we'd stop by and take a look at him. In my mind, Lagiacrus is what you get when a Zenolga is able to move like Mizutsune, as he lends both design and gameplay elements from each of these monsters. I love the way he builds and stores charge up in the scales protruding from his back, and accordingly he gains access to some high voltage moves when they reach its pinnacle. From my understanding, Laggy was introduced in a previous title as an underwater fight, so in a way this isn't even the true way you're supposed to experience the hunt. MHGU of course is a celebration game which included all previous monsters. Lagiacrus simply had to be a land fight here, which is sort of a shame, but I also have no idea what underwater combat is like, so maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Overall this was such a fun fight, and I'm happy to join a fan club that hopes to see him make a return soon. Now last but not least, Glavenus. Much like us hunters, this guy wields a weapon of his own, and by causing friction via his teeth or nearby stones, he's able to superheat it. This adds to the sharpness and gives it fire blight properties. If that's not already terrifying enough, he can also breathe fire. I mentioned earlier about Astalos being a double-edged sword, but in this case, Glavenus follows this in the most literal sense possible. Only while his tail blade is superheated does it become vulnerable, in a similar manner to when blacksmiths heat up metal to make it malleable. However, as he's constantly swinging his tail around, it can be hard to consistently beat on it, so you might instead choose to hit his head while it has that red hue, as dealing enough damage will knock him out of that state and give you a damage opening. Glav is likely the most familiar member of the Fated Four to a lot of my viewers due to his presence in Monster Hunter World. On top of that, we of course had the subspecies Acidic Glavenus, which later joined that same roster. With this being said, it's incredibly interesting seeing a monster I previously didn't give much thought to, now acting almost as a final boss to a chapter of an older game. After all, by his own right, Glavenus was a flagship monster in Generations. Many people likely think of him in the same vein that I hold Nergigante dear to my heart. There's so many memorable pieces to this fight, like hearing the sound of grating metal before his spiralling assault. So without doubt, I'll come back and try this fight a few more times moving forward. Overall, the Fated Four truly live up to the hype. In Generations Ultimate, they serve as a skill check, almost telling the player that you've now reached a checkpoint where things are only going to ramp up from here. If you can't beat these guys, you're in for a tough time, and they do cover a large amount of ground. Each monster represents one of the main blights, for example, excluding of course things like poison and sleep, which teaches you how to deal with the mechanics firsthand. The emphasis on positioning is also crucial. Whether you're navigating Mizutsune's bubbles or finding a sweet spot against Gammoth, weak points and moments of opportunity become apparent via Glavenus' tail or Astalos' horn. Then you've got the difference in aggressive behaving monsters like Astalos versus more hit and run tactics presented by Mizu. And I could go on and on with examples like this, but maybe that's a topic in a video of itself. Let me know what you think about that. In any case, when you finally conquer each of the Fated Four, their respective villages celebrate your achievement, reinforcing your growth as a hunter. This gratification fuels your desire to keep pushing through the game's challenges, and it's inspired me to the point where I can't wait to see what lies in front of me. I'm worried I've been yapping on a bit too much, so we'll leave it here for now. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe for future entries in the series. And if you haven't done so already, please feel free to check out previous episodes by checking out the playlist. Thanks for watching.